Hey, you guys, this is the Couplings Fire podcast. Here's a couple of things you might need to know, or maybe you just forgot. I'm Taylor. I'm a volunteer firefighter and also a fire wife to my favorite firefighter. Join me as I talk anything and everything fire related. I don't claim to be an expert. I just love to talk fire, and everything I say is my own opinion. My goal? To inspire anyone listening to take the steps to bettering their department however they can. Let's get on to the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Couplings Fire podcast. This is going to be my very first attempt at a full episode of just myself, co-host no longer, solo host from now on. Well, not really from now on, but plan to get some other co-hosts on the future. If you didn't listen to my last podcast update episode, go ahead and take a listen to that now, or right after you listen to this one. It'll kind of explain what's going on, everything that's going on with Chris and me, and kind of where the future of the podcast is heading, right? So, anywho, this is going to be a lot of fun to figure out how these episodes are going to feel now, right? So, at least the solo ones. I think the other ones will be pretty similar to what you were used to before, but these solo ones, I'm going to have to find a bit of a groove for a little while, so you may be seeing a lot of them coming out right away. I may be putting in some other things in between. We're going to find out together, right? Anyways, yeah, welcome. I'm Taylor. Nice to meet you. If you guys ever get a chance to talk to me on social media or Clubhouse or see me in person, whatever, please come say hi. I love talking to everybody. I could talk fire all day long. Anybody who out there knows me knows that. So we have a Facebook page, Couplings Fire Podcast, also an Instagram page, also Couplings Fire Podcast. You can find me, like I said, on Clubhouse. I'm at Couplings Pod on there. Come check out Clubhouse. It is basically, also not sponsored, but it is like one of my favorite apps to interact with people on, right? So Clubhouse is basically an app that is like a podcast, except for we get to interact back and forth. It's an audio-only platform, and it's so much fun. People start these rooms to talk in. Some of them are formal, some of them are super laid back, right? So if you guys want to know more about Clubhouse, go ahead, feel free to message or email me, and I'll get you all that information, and we'll get you started on there. Otherwise, go look up the Clubhouse app on your app store to get that downloaded and join me. So, let's see. Where do I start? Okay, this is like probably gonna be one of the last time I talk too much about Chris, right? Just because we have other things to get onto, right? But he is starting his first day of academy today, and since it's basically the time for first day of school photos anyways, I thought it would be freaking hilarious to take a first day of school photo. So I took some. It was cute. It was fun. But then I had to do one since he has to leave the house at 5:45 in the morning, right? Like, oof. Yikes. For a girl who's used to getting up at like 7:30 or 8, getting up at actually 4:45 for him to be able to leave by 5:45 is a bit of a chore for me to get up with him. And everyone's like, well, why are you getting up with him at the same time then? Well, makes everything easier, getting in and out of bed, different times, you don't have to wake each other up. I don't know. I sleep better when I go to sleep at the same time, so that'll be fun transition once he actually gets into life being a first responder, like full-time first responder, right? Because he'll be gone for 24 hours at a time, so it'll be an interesting transition, let me tell you, and I'll probably talk more about that once we get to that point, but we got a little while till that now. That won't be happening until January, right? So, anyways, first day of academy, 5:45 in the morning, he's headed out, and it's, like, super dark, so, like, I took this picture that was, like, literally, like, all black. Said, happy first day of school, Chris, here's your obligatory first day of school picture, so it was great. Anywho, it's the little things, right? Okay, so the first thing I want to really talk about before we get started with the episode, because I feel like that's one of the parts I love the most about these episodes, right, is the intro talk. So this post has been kind of going crazy a little bit for the last 20 hours now. So there was a storage unit fire, right, in, let's see, Washington? I think it was Washington. Anywho, so apparently an unattended candle in a storage unit, caused this fire. And the fire investigators determined that the fire was accidental in nature. And I know I've kind of been reading through the comments, and I looked through some of the information they had on here, and I mean, I'm torn too, like everybody else is, right? Everybody's saying, well, how's it accidental? A candle lit in a storage unit doesn't make sense. That has to be intentional. Well, even though it's not supposed to happen, people do reside in these storage units sometimes, right? I've honestly never thought about it. I just assumed that people wouldn't reside in storage units. I know Chris and I had to get one when we moved, just because we were moving from a full, like, 2.5 story home, like huge, right? Like old Victorian home, into a relative's basement. So we didn't have place for all our stuff, so we had to get a storage unit. So through that rental agreement for the storage unit, it says in there you're not allowed to live in there and stuff like that, right? And like it has this whole thing you have to sign off on. Now I don't know exactly what the words. I'm not sure exactly what the agreement was for this storage unit. They all can be different, but I'm going to assume at this point it's probably the same way. But it doesn't mean that people always follow the rules, right? Like it's something that you hear. It's not clear. A house is not vacant until we deem it so, right? You've heard that before. You're gonna hear it again. Even if somebody says everyone's out of the house, you know how many times firefighters have gone in to search a house or to go do a fire suppression, and they've been told that everybody was out, but there was someone there that they didn't know was home, or somebody had a sleepover and their friend was still in there, even though the daughter was out. It happens. It sucks. And, that's a whole different story, thing to get on. But, we can't assume that people are following the rules when it comes to this stuff. So who knows exactly if somebody was living in here? Maybe it was a squatter of some sort, or quote unquote homeless person, or someone in here living and they had a candle. Maybe, it could be that, somebody was just trying to make the smell better in the storage unit for a little while they were there. It could kind of make sense, right? But they left the candle on, they forgot to blow it out before they left. Well, shoot. There's a lot of reasons why this really could have happened and why it could be accidental. And there's some, reasons why it may be intentional too, if you put a lit candle next to quote unquote combustibles, too close to that. It's just I mean, people have made comments in the comments on it, how, it could have been an act of arson, but, fire investigators deemed it not so. We don't have the whole story, so we can't say what way it is, right? What exactly happened. But I think it sheds a light on the fact that, again, even a place like a storage unit, you can't guarantee people aren't in there. You have to search. And a storage unit poses its own crapshoot of problems anyways, right? A lot of times they're stuffed with stuff. I've seen some that are stuffed to the brim, all the way to the front door. You literally cannot see a square foot of free space. And I've seen others that are pretty empty most of the time, that are meant to house bigger things that they get out from time to time, right? You have each side of the coin. It's a whole nightmare to fight, and you have so much fire load in there. You're basically dealing, in my mind, with a hoarder situation in each storage unit, is what you're dealing with. It's not safe to go inside until you get stuff out of there, right? You don't know exactly what's in there, because even though they sign off that they're not supposed to have any chemicals or something in there, no one's going and checking that, right? So just something to think about for you guys. I know, being in a small town before, I never thought about it. I knew we had storage units in town, right? But I didn't think about what the consequences could be if it started on fire. I never even thought about it starting on fire, to be honest. I don't know. Like, it's those things that don't come across very often, and you don't think about it. So you really need to have a type of pre-plan, even if it's super basic, on each type of building in your area if possible, right? Even if you can't get each building, that's fine. Each type of building, what does it house actually, right? I know I went off with a bunch of different things on that one. And maybe I could make a whole episode just on my thoughts on this and different things to think about, but I want to get on to something else today. So, moving on to an actual episode. Getting out of the beginning stuff. Again, I could... More things keep coming to my head about that storage unit thing. No, I'm going to leave it for now. I'm going to leave it because I really want to get onto this other one. So, volunteer departments and dealing with the press. Every time I come up with an episode like something like this, I hear the groans in my head already. I'm wondering if people are actually going to listen to it. I'm wondering if people are actually going to tolerate it. You know, they're like, oh no, not another one of these, right? And I know that's just my own demon in my head telling me, you know, trying to keep me from actually putting this out there. But I think it's something that, like a lot of other things we've talked about in the past on this podcast, is something that people don't talk about enough, right? And I've heard from many volunteer departments, especially in the rural areas, but on many volunteer departments and different people I see at conferences and things, they don't understand the press. Like, they get that they're there to take pictures, and they get that they have to be there to report the news, but they don't get why they're there, or why they do what they do, or how do they not understand where we need them as the press to be, you know? How does the press not understand what the fire department expects of them? You know, it should be basic knowledge. Well, it's something like I keep it reiterating time after time. Communication. Communication is the biggest detrimental... I don't know what to call it. I don't know. But it is the thing that causes the most grief. Not in just the fire service, but in life, is communication. Lack of communication, well, there's really no such thing as over-communication. I feel like over-communication is just making sure that everyone's on the same page, right? There's such a thing as over-communication on a fire scene. I get that, especially over the radio. I'm not talking about that. That'll be for later. But communication is so important, and so many people don't understand it. Even though you think, oh, I talk to people, I know communication. You're not being blunt enough. People can't read minds, right? I was getting in a little argument with Chris yesterday. Something tiny, right? Just tiny, nothing crazy. And he was getting so frustrated, and I was getting so frustrated. And it's like, what is happening? And I was like, dude, what's wrong? And he explained to me, well, I want your help on this. Oh, okay. Because I was going to come downstairs and turn on Facebook and do something else, right? Because I think there was a live on Facebook or something, right? And so I was going to go do that. Well, he was never actually saying out loud that he expected or wanted me to help him with something else, right? I can't read minds. And if somebody's giving me attitude, I just think they're giving me attitude, right? I don't realize, even though I should because I do it myself, you know, but I don't realize that they are trying to subtly show me without telling me what they want me to do. That doesn't work, right? People are dumb, myself included. You have to be super blunt with what you talk about. Anyways, so back to the beginning of this, right? People complain about the press, about how they do things. They don't understand it. Well, let's talk about that. So, common problems with dealing with the press that I hear. Sometimes they get the wrong information, right? And this can be in the fact of they talk to somebody on the fireground who doesn't know enough of the situation. They may talk to a retired member. They may talk to a maybe the building owner, right? They may talk to somebody else who doesn't have all the know-how, and they may be getting some of the wrong information. Other times, they hear the right information, but they don't know how to word it, and they don't quite understand it, so they reword it wrong, right? And sometimes they completely guess on their own about what's going on because they didn't talk to anybody, because maybe you have a policy where you don't talk to the press, right? So sometimes the wrong info gets out there, and it sucks, and we need to find a way to fix that. So that's one of the biggest problems with that, is the wrong information getting out. And another big complaint I hear is the press not being where they should be on a scene, right? Maybe they're too close. Maybe they're getting a different angle. Maybe they're on the property when they shouldn't be, right? Maybe it's just bothering your first responders, or maybe it's actually in the way of rescue or suppression efforts. And maybe it's a place where they can actually get hurt, but they don't know. Let's obviously, like they're probably not going to go right up next to a house on a house fire, but I've seen it happen too, especially smaller things. It happens. If you don't tell them anything, it happens. On a bigger car wreck, if you don't have something out there to tell them where to stay back to, they're going to come up as far as you let them on a car wreck or something like that. Same with that hazmat incident. Especially with the common everyday person and the press, they don't always understand how dangerous hazmat incidents can be. Let's say you had a car wreck with something in a truck that spilled, right? They don't realize how dangerous even the fumes off of that or anything could be, depending on what it is. And it's okay that they don't know, right? We should be working to educate them, yes, but you shouldn't be freaking out that they don't know it. They don't know it, so you need to be able to guide them. Anyways, those are the two biggest problems I see and I've heard about when you deal with the press, right? So in order to work with the press and to have a great working relationship, you need to understand what's legal for them to do and what isn't, right? Okay, we're going to preface this with, I am not a lawyer. I do not speak for your state or country laws or even your city laws, right? Those trump everything I say, right? This is not professional legal advice. This is what I know of the law in my area, right? So, take it for what you will. Always check it out with somebody else first. Don't just take my word on it. Do your own research. Okay, moving on. So, what's legal and what isn't? All right, so as far as I understand, taking photos from unblocked public roadways are legal. If they're on a sidewalk, if they're in a public roadway, doesn't matter. It's completely legal for them to take pictures from there. And there's not much you can do about it. Right? If you want them back from a certain spot, you have to put up those barriers and tell them about it. I suggest doing it. But if you don't have a physical barrier, like a fire line, the actual fire line tape or something, they can come in there as long as, and most of the time if you tell somebody, hey, can you please stay behind this truck if you don't have fire line or something? And most of the time, if you take the time to actually go and talk to that reporter, they will understand. As long as you're not yelling at them, right? You talk to them in a calm manner, to kind of get back and stay, like, let's say behind the truck or something like that, and that's kind of where they need to be. Now, the problem with that is you have to do that for every single person that comes up at all. So there's that. So I do recommend having a fire line or some other barrier that you can put up, right? Okay, so that, from what I understand, is legal. It's completely within the public's eye, basically. Everything that the public can see is legal for photos. All right, now, if they're on private land, that's a whole different story. Now, the landowner can grant them access to that land, right? But that is up to the landowner. And you still have your fire line area, right? Your actual incident that you can hold them back from, right? Otherwise, if they don't have permission to be on that private land from the landowner, they can't be there. They have to move. So, like, let's say they don't have permission from the landowner and you're out in the country and the house is a quarter mile in, like, basically like in the middle of this pasture or something, right? I've seen houses like that plenty of times. If they don't have permission from the landowner to be there, the closest they can get to that scene is all the way back at that dirt road, right? Which is quite a ways away. And let's say you're in a warehouse area or something like that and it's fenced in, right? They cannot be inside that fenced area unless they have permission from that landowner. And even then, you deem where you need people back from, but you need to have that marked. Okay, moving on. They're allowed to be there. They're allowed to be on the scene. They're allowed to be in that area. You can't tell them to go home, right? You can't tell them to go 5 blocks down unless that is a legitimate radius that you need everyone who is not actively engaged to be back at, right? You can't make exceptions for certain people that have to go back that far. But they are allowed to be there, so you can't get mad when the local newspaper shows up, even if you don't like them. They are allowed to be there. That's their job. They're supposed to keep the public informed. And you got to know what is legal and what isn't for what information you can or can't give them in a statement, right? And this varies. It definitely varies. I've seen it all over the board. So I would definitely run it over with your station, your chief, your president, a lawyer, whatever. I would find somebody to talk to and, make sure that everyone in your department understands what they can and can't say to the press. Simply because how many times I've heard about somebody going to just a lowly firefighter, maybe 2 or 3 months on the department, and they're asking them questions. That firefighter may not know any better and may be giving a lot more information than what they legally should be about that fire, right? So you need to definitely have those conversations with your department prior to these incidents where press may be showing up. So definitely do that. So how do we work with the press better? Now that you kind of know some of these kind of guidelines and whatnot with it. Well, my first strategy is to supply them with photos, if you can, from you, right? This will make sure that you have the control on what goes out to the public. Of course, they're going to be taking their own pictures, but sometimes they may lax on going to a scene if they know they're going to get a photo from somebody on the department. And this isn't saying at all that everyone on there should have their cell phone out and taking pictures all the time. No. That's not good. This is, you have a specific person or couple people on the department where this is one of their sub jobs or maybe their only job. That's how I started out on my first department, right? I started taking pictures, and that was part of the thing, was to take pictures mostly for department record, but also for the newspaper of stuff that was legal and safe to give them, right? Obviously, we went over this, I think, a bit in the PR episode, but you have to know what's legal and what's not, again, to share, right? Same things. So by giving them your own photos, right? Like I said just a second ago, you are taking control of what the public sees, right? You are making sure that they see your firefighters at their best. You are making sure that they see things that are legal to take of the photos, right, for the public to see. You just have a better grasp on that. And sometimes it's best to be in control of some of that stuff, if you can, from time to time, just to make sure they're not getting a picture of maybe somebody was not thinking for a second and did something a little bit wrong on one of the trucks or something, or whatnot. Just, you have better control over what the public sees and how they view you, and it really works into your public relations. Also, they may really love it sometimes, and because I know on small newspapers, it's sometimes hard to get away / find somebody who is able to go to these incidents. That way, it's still reported, and the newspaper can kind of take a break from sending somebody, and you know that you're giving them the pictures that you want to be seen, right? Next up, have a meeting and set guidelines on where they can and can't be due to safety. This is, I don't know why places don't do this. This is like gold, right? It's the epitome of setting expectations. So they know where they can and can't be for certain types of incidents or for all incidents. Maybe you just have one blanket rule for it. Maybe you go ahead and tell them, hey, just so you know, in the future, this is the information we can give you, and this is the type of information we cannot give you. So don't ask. Makes it a lot easier. And it just makes the relationship that much more cohesive when you're working with each other, right? I would do this kind of a meeting with, first of all, whoever is your PR person or works with the newspaper doing that kind of thing. Maybe it's your fire chief, maybe it's your PR rep, maybe it's your president. Whoever needs to be involved in that conversation, Have them all in the same room at the same time so everyone can voice their concerns and ask questions and get answers right away. That is very, very important to have in this meeting. All right, next one. If you don't know what information you can give, giving little to no information but still having an interview is far better than not speaking with them at all. And you're thinking, what? What? If I can't give them any information, why would I talk to them? It doesn't make any sense. Well, first of all, it goes back to our PR episode, right? It's great PR for it. And they see that you're willing to work with them, not that you're just completely being silent. If you be silent, it's a subtle nonverbal way of saying that you are either unconfident or you are incompetent or that you are doing something wrong. Even if you're not. Even if that's completely the opposite. It is subconscious in people's brains when you refuse to make a comment that that's what's happening. The public wants to know, and it is their right to know what their fire department is doing, even if you can't give them the details, right? Even if you're protecting other people's rights. So how do you go about doing this? It sounds impossible. You do it with flair, you know? You talk about maybe how you've been working. Yeah, you can talk about how long you've been there. You can talk about what apparatus you have on scene, maybe some of the resources you've used or are planning to use, whatever. You're able to say some of that stuff. You can talk about locations, like this is the address you're at, because that's public information, right? So as long as you kind of have in your back of your mind what public information is, like what is public information about a fire scene, and then have some of those extra things like how many people you have on scene and how long you've been there, like I just said, all that stuff, you're able to give a pretty good interview for the press. And this can be done by anybody. It doesn't have to be done by a PR rep or a chief. I do recommend it's done by a PR rep or a chief or somebody or a captain, but it doesn't have to be necessarily. As long as you have somebody who is knowledgeable about the stuff and who won't give information that cannot be given, I think it's fine for anyone to do it. I think it'd be best to maybe practice an interview with them a few times just to make sure that they're good. But sometimes you're not able to get, especially on big incidents, you're not able to get to the chief or the PR person or whatever. Well, hopefully the PR person. But, if your volunteer department doesn't have that, it's hard to get to the chief. It's hard to get to a captain sometimes. So you have to have somebody knowledgeable who you trust at other points of entry. Meaning like fill sites and stuff like that, right? Where press may be going to because it's a safe distance away, is what I'm meaning. I think I finished that thought. Did I finish that thought? Did I? I don't know. Basically, just the people want to know what's going on, and you can give them a pretty good interview. Oh, I did remember the one thing I want to put on with that. If they ask you a question that you can't answer, you can say, that you can't answer that question at the moment, or more investigation needs to be done, or some other thing like that, right? You're allowed to say that. That is absolutely no problem there. You don't want to do it too much if you can help it, but if they keep asking you questions that you can't answer, you kind of have no other choice. What you can do, if you want the interview to go smoother, is when the press comes up to you for an interview, you can tell them, hey, here's the information. I cannot talk about these types of things. And then that way, hopefully they ask you the questions that don't relate to those at all, so you don't even have to say those things. You don't have to say that you can't comment on anything, or that you don't have the information for it right now, or more investigation has to be done. If you set up the expectations even right before, 2 seconds before the interview happens, it's going to guide that interviewer a lot better. All right, on to the next thing. Go ahead and open up with the public on social media. Open up with the paper on some of the things that you do. Go ahead and send them articles that you've written, or invite them to come out for an interview or something about different parts of your department, right? It'll get them to trust you more when the actual call comes up, because they're already used to working with you. And especially with the public, they're already used to you giving them information that is correct and true. So it's going to just be an easier, seamless transition on scene because they'll know how to interact with you. That one's pretty self-explanatory. The next one is to build a relationship with them. And you may think, I don't have time for that. Or I don't like the person who runs the paper, or whatever. I understand. But that's not what this is about. You don't have to build a personal relationship, right? It doesn't have to be buddy-buddy. You don't have to go get drinks on the weekends. You don't have to talk about high school or who knows what, right? You don't have to do that. No, it's just building a nice working relationship with them. You want to keep that line of communication open both ways. It's going to help so much. And it's hard to put into words how it does, but over time, you're just going to see it work. Again, I keep talking back to that public relations episode, right? The deadbeat brother one. Again, go listen to that if you haven't yet, or right after this, listen to that, because this ties in really hand in hand with that episode. But you will see it start to happen over time, right? And it'll just make everything easier, so much easier in the long run. And the last kind of thought I have on all this, right, is invite the press to some practices. And you're like, what? Why would the press want to come to practices? It doesn't make sense. Let them see how you operate. Okay? So if they see how you operate at practices, maybe you do a specific drill while they're there, right? Maybe you actually do like responding to a house fire or a car wreck or something. You do the whole 9 yards of like the fake page, and you come out and you actually set up, and it's like a live scenario, right? They're going to see how you work. They're going to understand where the safe places are to be and where it's not safe to be, especially if you have an officer or public relations person or safety officer, whoever, kind of stay with them and explain to them what's going on while they're seeing everything play out. They're able to understand why you do what you do, and they're going to understand where they best fit into that, right? Everything's better when you understand more. And then the next kind of point to this point is once they get on scene and they see you actually at a call, it won't be near as flashy, right? It won't be like, ooh, here comes the heroes. I mean, it will be because, they still don't get to see you every day, right? It'll be something different, and maybe something will actually be on fire, but it won't be so flashy to them. They're not going to be starstruck, basically, is kind of the best words I can use, right? You know what I mean? We're just kind of like, they start thinking dumb, and they're there and they don't know what they're doing and whatnot. They're going to have seen it before, so they're going to be used to what they need to do. And then the third point to this last point, I need like an A, B, and C for this. You may get some good public relations stuff out of this, out of bringing them to the practice, because if you invite them to the practice, maybe they photograph at the practice, and maybe they'll put some more in the paper or on their website or whatever about how your practice went, what you guys are working on. It's another outlet to reach more people that you aren't reaching yourselves on your website or Facebook or however you're currently marketing your department. Plus, it doesn't matter how much you market your own department, it works really well and there's good ways to do it. But it's always 1,000 times better when somebody else does it for you. Because it's not just you talking good about yourself, because people expect that. We all expect everyone to say good things about their own department, their own place, and themselves, right? It's just fact of life. You expect it. When somebody else talks good about you, it's a blaring good review of you. They don't have anything. They don't owe you anything when they make those good reviews, when they talk about you well and stuff. So when somebody else talks good about your department, that is going to be marketing PR for your department on steroids, basically, because it's just they're going to see it from somebody else, from a different perspective. It's not going to be the same way that you talk on your department page all the time. It's going to be something else, something completely different, and hit different people different ways. It's just it opens a can of worms there, a great can of worms, can of gummy worms. sour ones or ultimate sour ones. I'm not sure, but I'm a fan for like I'm a fan for the sour ones versus the sweet gummy worms, I'm gonna say. So haven't had those in a while, but may have to go grab a bag of them now. Making me hungry. Anyways, so overall, just remember, as much as the press may bother you and you think that they don't know anything, they do, right? As much as everybody loves to kind of make fun of the fact of them being there and complain back at the station, once the call's over about this person getting in the way or being there at all and stuff like that, or as soon as they come on scene going, ugh, whatever, just remember they have a right to be there. And also, you actually do want them there, and you want them on your side while they're there. So those relationships are extremely key, and you need to work on those and make sure that you're setting up your department and the press for the best interactions that they can have in the situations. And that is all I have on that subject. I actually thought this was going to go way longer, so I'm very surprised it didn't go as long. I think it's because I didn't have somebody... I love Chris co-hosting, right? But I think it's because I didn't have somebody kind of like interjecting their own thoughts at the same time. So it's like, oh man, these are actually a lot shorter than I thought it'd be. I could talk about this all day. I don't know. So, so to end this out, let me know what you guys thought of this episode, of this podcast in general. Go ahead, send me a message somewhere, and just let me know. I love hearing feedback. I love knowing what I can do to make you learn better or get more information that's more relevant to you. If you or somebody you know wants to be on this podcast, please reach out to me, right? I love talking with people. I cannot say that enough. I love talking with people. It's such a good interaction. Interacting with people, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? I don't even know. But we can either do an interview style where I actually interview somebody about something, or we can just talk about a specific subject. I have a bunch of episode ideas that I've been biting at the bit to do, and some of them I really want to do with the co-host. So we don't even have to get into you or what you do. We just talk about a fun subject. So reach out if you yourself or know somebody who wants to do it. Let me know. We'll get that set up. Otherwise, I hope you learned something in this episode, and I can't wait to be bringing you more podcasts in the future. And for everyone listening, have a good night, good day, whatever time you're listening to this, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye. Thanks for coming by and listening to the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a rating and review wherever you're listening. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Couplings Fire Podcast. See you next time, everybody.